How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Was grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. This morning our prayer list is rather long, and just refer to that. Carolyn had come this morning asking for continual prayers for Dee and his health situation. She asked prayers for Braden and Mariah as well. And so let's keep that family in our prayers. And we had learned this afternoon, many of you may know Danny Ashley. That's Larry's brother, Larry and Dale's brother. And he's lives in Alaska, and they had rushed him to a hospital in Anchorage. Felt like he was having a heart attack, but they inserted some stents, and he's doing better. So Dale had let us know if we would add him to the prayer list for his recovery. So we have many on the prayer list, so just continue to refer to the bulletin for that. This morning, we also made mention of a opportunity for the next 2 weeks. Bob is willing to take clothes to Southern Christian Home, and I think he's already started collecting some clothes, and I know for sure we've got some at the club that we're going to put together for children's clothes. And so if you have any others, we're going to go 2 weeks from today and collect those things. Somebody can figure out where we're going to put them. We can put them probably in the back. But we'll put all those together, and then Bob will take those down to Southern Christian Home that week after. Johnny Sue wanting us to make mention of the Ladies' Day. We've had it in the bulletin on and off. That is scheduled for September. And she was wanting to meet tonight, but I don't see her. So what she was asking is for the women, if you will, to think of some topics. Michelle Moore is going to be the speaker. Anne's been speaking to Michelle, and she'll be the speaker. But if you'd like to add some thoughts on topics for her to speak on, then they'll gather those up, give those to Michelle, and let her see what she can. I'm sure she'll come up with many things. She has many topics that she's written about. So if you'll do that, Johnny Sue had asked for us to do that. Welcome our new brother Nathan, and he was added to the Lord's Church on Wednesday as he obeyed the Lord in baptism. I'm so happy for him. Any others? Yes.
Falling down the ramp when you got to our vision place. Into that something they can fracture each other.
So Randy Gray, Mr. Used to be. Okay. Any others? Okay. All right. There's a lot of activities going on with the schools over the next few weeks, and there's names in the bulletin as well for those that will be graduating, and we've added Sam Warner. Will be graduating from magazine, and Jim had mentioned Ethan Falconer graduated yesterday with a degree in missionary work. So participating in our services tonight, of course, Jim will have a lesson, and so we'll be asking a couple of men to lead prayers for us at the appropriate time. This is one of those nights where I'm going to be asking for requests for songs that we want to sing. So be thinking about that. We'll start off with number 715, and then following this, yes. Okay. That's great. Now, where did they go to school at Greenwood? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Anything else? $715. Church is one foundation. Following the songs of memories. The church is one foundation, is Jesus Christ her Lord. She is His new creation by water and the word. From them He came and sought her to be His holy bride. With His own blood He bought her, and for her life He died. He led from every nation, yet one for all the earth. Her charter of salvation, one Lord, one faith, one birth. One holy name she blesses, partakes one holy food, and to one hope she dresses with every grace endued. In toil and tribulation, and to whatever more, she waits the consolation of peace forevermore. Till with nothing and the great church victorious shall be the church that rests. Some glad morning when this life is o'er, I'll fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. lesson, number 902. All right, song before the lesson. So I have song 176. 176. Your only Son, no sin too high, but you have sent him from your side to boil upon this guilty sod, and to become the Lamb of God. Lord, in the love they crucified, they laughed and swore, and as he died, the humble King, they named the cross and sacrificed the Lamb of God. O Lamb of God, sweet Lamb of God, I love the holy Lamb of God. Oh, wash me in His precious blood. My Jesus Christ, the Lamb of God. I was so lost, I should have died, but you have brought me to your side, to be led by your staff and rod, and to be called the Lamb of God. O Lamb of God, sweet Lamb of God, I love the holy Lamb of God. Oh, wash me in His precious blood. My Jesus Christ, the Lamb of God. Good evening. It's good to see everyone. We have a good number. We have almost equal representation on both sides, so that's always a good Sunday evening when we have that. It's good to see you all. I tell you, this year is going by quickly, and we finally have the hot weather, so that's good. And next week will be a busy day. Now, Boonville's Baccalaureate is at 2, right? Right, next week 2. And then, unless they change it, Magazine usually has theirs Sunday evening. So, we do have those in both. And then Boonville, to me, the thing that usually not as many people show up, but to me, senior night is a special night that Boonville does. Some high schools will combine that with graduation, and so Tuesday night's just where they get to tell all the different things that each senior has done, the different scholarships they've earned, and it's a little bit more intimate setting. That's always at the auditorium at the school, and then, of course, Thursday evening, 8 o'clock, maybe, yes. So, I'm going to bring 2 boxes of Kleenex, and maybe that'll be enough. So, I don't know. It's going to be a tough night, I think. Steve is talking about, oh, no big deal. And then I said, well, I remember when I saw you when Megan won Miss DHS. And he told me that was surprise and shock that she had won. And so I said, well, it's the same thing. Congratulations. So anyway, Genesis 42. We'll go ahead and move on. Genesis 42. Famine brings a family together. And we're getting into, Joseph had such a hard time in his life, and then
he interpreted Pharaoh's dream, and he went from being in the basement of the prison to basically being next in command over all Egypt. And you can imagine what a turnaround that would be, but throughout it all, Joseph maintained his faith in God. And so we see that indeed, if you recall the dream that Pharaoh had, there would be 7 years of plenty, then 7 years of lean. And so that lean years would be a lot of places. It wouldn't just be in Egypt. We see it extended on even into the land of Canaan. And that's where our setting is tonight, Genesis 42. Now, before we do this, we need to kind of get some things because, if you don't really understand the distance or time between, you might, well, how in the world would they not recognize it? And you need to understand Joseph was one of the young ones. He was of the 10 that would be going to Egypt. He would have been the youngest. And not only that, he was a young teen, 17 years old. And that was, he was no longer a teen. Not only that, he would have been probably wearing the clothing that the Egyptians were, and they were into wearing some kind of some makeup type stuff. And so he would not have looked like the same person. And how would they have ever thought that this person that is speaking the Egyptian language and ahead of that, it just never would have come to them that this could have been Joseph. Well, so how long of a distance? And I think that really puts some time, because I don't know about you, but I don't look exactly like I did when I was 17. Did anyone say they looked exactly, Megan say she is 17, almost 18. But anyway, most of us couldn't say we looked like we did when we were 17. We just don't. I know when first church I preached at full time was a church that my dad had preached when I was a teenager. When I was basically 17. And so I come back, and I was mainly going to be their education minister, but I was actually pregnant at the time. I don't think that's the child that graduated. I think it would have been a younger one. But anyway, Gabe had this curly hair. I mean, just this, big full head of curly hair. And I saw a picture that was at a graduation. And, Wendy didn't look much different, just older, but Gabe, I don't think I would recognize him because he had absolutely no hair. And so, going from this curly, almost afro-like hair to nothing. And so, things change. And so we're going to see that. So I'm going to back up and just set the setting, because the nice thing the Scripture does is we know exactly how old Joseph was. So in Genesis 37:2, it says, "These are the generations of Jacob," or Israel. "Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to the father." And this was part of it. Yes, he had this dream where they bowed down to him, but he kind of snitched on them. I mean, they were not doing what they should be doing, and he came back and told his father, "Dad, they're not doing as they should." Well, as I say, that was part of the reason that they didn't like it. And so he was 17 years old about the time he sold into slavery. Now, in Genesis 41:46, it says, "Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt." And recall, this is after he had interpreted Pharaoh's dream, which had troubled him. And he told him there's going to be 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. And, I would recommend you build storehouses to store up the plenty, so there's plenty of food when we have the 7 years of famine. Pharaoh liked the idea, and that's when he appointed Joseph over this and second in command over all Egypt. And he was about 30 years old. So what we see is in Genesis 45:6, this time period, we'll get into next week, it's other things that will take place, and we'll get to this verse, but it says, "For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest." And so you can then calculate how old Joseph was when his brothers would see him again. So Joseph would be the 30 plus the 7 years of plenty and the 2 years of famine. So Joseph was roughly 39 years old. Well, his brothers Of course, these were all older than him. Don't know exactly. It'd be hard to really know for sure, but they were a decent amount older than him. Joseph was quite a bit younger than most of them. And so it would have been taken 39 minus 17 when he was sold into slavery, and it would have been 22 years. Well, what did you look like 22 years? Some of us maybe didn't look much different, but some of us did. And especially the younger you are, the more you change in that time. And so 22 years had passed. Now, not only that, we have a thing called Facebook where you see pictures posted. That's one of the neat things. You see pictures of family members you don't get to see that often, and so you kind of get an idea of what they look like. But no such thing back then, so you can imagine someone that you've never seen in 22 years, how much they would change, especially if they didn't speak. And so we see again that it had been a long enough time they wouldn't have been. Now, you can also see that the older you are, some of us a certain bit older, you don't change as much after you get to a certain point. You kind of look similar. And once your hair starts turning gray or coming out, you kind of look the same for a long period of time, and it's easy to recognize you. And also, you would be speaking a language. And there's a lot of indicators of who these kin were. So Joseph had a big advantage in knowing who they were. So in Genesis 42, in our lesson text, beginning with verse 1, it says, "When Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, 'Why do you look at one another?' And he said, 'Behold, I have heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die.' So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him." Now, Benjamin, I've read different things. He was probably close to that 30-year age mark at this time. So he was by far the youngest, and Jacob was scared that he would go there and something would happen. So he sent the 10. I do like this. I can imagine my own father, saying something like this. We're just sitting around like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And Jacob says, well, there's food in Egypt. Go down and get some, And so that's what he does. He sends them down there to get some food. And verse 5 says, "Thus the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came, for famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land." That was his job, was to, when people wanted food, he was the one that would sell them. "And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground." Now, what did Joseph's dreams say they would do? Exactly what he did not. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. "Where do you come from?" he said. They said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." And Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them, and he said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." And so Joseph is trying to get some information, and so he does. He treats them roughly so he can do this without everyone knowing. And then it says, verse 13, "And they said, 'We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not born.' But Joseph said to them, 'It is as I said to you, you are spies. By this you will be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you, and let him bring your brother while you remain confined, that your words may be tested whether there is truth in you. Or else, by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies.' And so he keeps them under guard for 3 days. And it says in verse 18, "On the 3rd day, Joseph said to them, 'Do this, and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers remain confined where you are in custody, and let the rest go and carry grain for the famine of your households. Bring your youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified, and you shall not die.' And they did so. Then they said to one another, 'In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother,'" the one that they told, this man of Egypt, us no more. And that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us and we did not listen. That is why the distress has come upon us. And Reuben answered to him, Did I not tell you not to sin against the boy? But you did not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. Now, Reuben had this idea that he was going to let him cast him into this pit, and then he's going to come back secretly and take him out and rescue him. But indeed, that wasn't what transpired. Remember, then Judah and the others, they're like, well, what benefit is us if we just kill him? Let's sell him. And then we get at least some money out of him. Reuben was a little bit horrified. And so Reuben says, there comes a reckoning for his blood. So these 10 brothers now, they felt that indeed this was payback, that God was rectifying something because of what they had done to Joseph. In their mind, they really thought that Joseph could be dead. But they had no way of knowing. And so in verse 23, of course, they would have been speaking Hebrew amongst themselves, but yet, they didn't know that Joseph obviously was there. It says they did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. So they didn't actually hear Joseph speaking in Hebrew. They heard him in the Egyptian language, and so Joseph, though, could understand it. Then he turned away from them and wept. And he returned to them and spoke to them. And he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. And Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, and to replace every man's money in his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. This was done for them. Then they loaded their donkeys with the grain and departed. Now, we're going to get on to more of this next week, as we're going to see Benjamin is brought before him, and eventually Joseph reveals himself. But he had to understand, were they contrite for what they'd done? What did they think? And indeed, he also wanted to see his brother, his youngest brother, and he also wanted to know about his father. So we'll get into that, and that's such a good thing. But I love what Reuben said, there comes a reckoning for his blood. Indeed, in the Old Testament, you see oftentimes that indeed, if you shed blood, you would be liable for that blood. Even the law of Moses, that was something that was a standard. And so Reuben is sure that this will happen to me. Now, it reminds me of something. There's so many parallels between Joseph. He began his to be responsible in the land of Egypt when he's about 30. We see that down in Egypt, Jesus would actually go down to Egypt at one point. Of course, Jacob would go down there eventually. But his blood be upon us. It reminds me of our Lord. In Matthew 27:25, you remember, the Jews had a sham of trial with their Sanhedrin, the religious leaders. They took him to Pilate. Pilate's like, I don't find anything wrong with him. Pilate wanted to free him, but they wanted Barabbas freed. And then Pilate's like, what do I do with this Jesus? And they said, crucify him. He's done nothing wrong. So they shout out in Matthew 27:25, and all the people answered, His blood be on us. Sure. Now, I want to tell you, the blood of Christ is upon all of us, really, because we all have sinned. And that's why Jesus had to die. And indeed, these 10 brothers were guilty of, in essence, giving Joseph up for as good as dead, sending him over to slavery. And, to me, the most awful thing they did was lie to their dad that he died. His blood be upon us. Now, indeed, Jesus' blood is upon all of us. And it's much greater than just Joseph giving them food and rescuing them in that sense and being reunited. For we had no hope without Christ. In Romans 5, verses 8 through 10 says, But God shows His love for us, in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Since therefore we have now been justified by His blood, how much more shall we be saved by Him from the wrath of God? For if while we were sinners we were reconciled to God by the death of His Son, much more, now that we are reconciled, shall we be saved by His life. These brothers felt that their life was over, and they knew and understood that there's no way that Jacob would allow the youngest to ever go down to Egypt. be at risk. They felt that Simeon would be murdered for this, and it'd be their fault. However, we sin. Romans 3:23 says, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. We deserve death, Romans 6:23, for the wages of sin is death. The debt due to us. Even just one sin in our life, the debt that will be due is death. But the free gift is in Christ Jesus our Lord. That's where salvation is. And so we indeed can be freed from our sins, not because we're so great, but because what Christ did for us when we were sinners. We were guilty, just as these brothers were guilty. Far worse. It wasn't just a brother, it was the Son of God. And indeed, because of what he did, we can be brought to freedom. It goes so bad for us. I just had a study with Nathan here, and it's always a wonderful study. You go through things, and before you talk about the good news of the gospel, you have to talk about bad news. Bad news is we sin. Bad news is separates. Well, the great news, though, is Jesus came to this earth just that. Died on that cross. Just like Nathan Wednesday night, Paul was told there's urgency. While you're waiting, rise and be baptized. Wash away your sins. I don't know if there's any other that needs to tonight, but if you've not yet a Christian, why don't you come on tonight? Know that Jesus' death is paying your debt. Or maybe you're here tonight, you've done things, you've faltered and done things that you need to make right this very evening. Maybe just like Carolyn this morning, you just need prayer for the congregation. Whatever the need may be, come now, so to stand as
nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the blood that makes me white as snow. No other ground I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. For my heart and this I see, nothing but the blood of Jesus. For my cleansing this I plead, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the blood that makes me white as snow. No other ground I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Nothing can force it out, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Not a good that I have done, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the blood that makes me white as snow. No other path I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus.
Are there any here tonight that have not had the voice of Jesus?
so very much for this day and for this meeting. For the opportunity of sending here this day. Remember our Lord and Savior Jesus sacrificed on the cross. As your children that are following you, obeying that plan that you have sacrificed. We partake now in this unleavened bread, which represents God's body. We remember that baptized in salvation. We dedicate His body. Bless those who take the time. Bless this word. We give thanks, Heavenly Father, for Jesus. This time that we can remember that sacrifice that He did. How that He suffered, bled, died, and cruel cross. Give those who take the sin and crucify and represent us. Bless them, bless us, bless Jesus.
Thank you, Lord,
for loving me, and thank you, Lord, for blessing me. Thank you, Lord, for making me whole and saving my soul. I want to thank you, Lord, for loving me. Thank you, Lord, for saving my soul.
Lord, we love you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for the prayer. Father, I pray that you